to an episode of The Watchmen. It's been a minute. What's up, Checkmate?
How you doing, Paul? I'm good.
We got some action going on.
What do we have?
On this topic, or topics included on this episode of The Watchmen include tunnels penetrated in Gaza. It appears the Arab world is uniting, and that would include both Sunni and Shia gangs getting together. And we got some Iceland quakes we're going to close with. We're going to open up with a little scripture reference. For those of you who've been following along on the website, been jumping back and forth between about 3 or 4 different verses in regards to what prophecy holds for the Gaza Strip. For Gaza shall be deserted, and Ashkelon shall become a desolation. Ashdod's people shall be driven out at noon, and Ekron shall be uprooted. Woe to you, inhabitants of the sea coast, you nation of the Cherethites. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines, and I will destroy you until no inhabitant is left. So currently there are inhabitants. At some point, no more. And one could make the argument that goes all the way up the Mediterranean coast, even into Lebanon, Tyre, Sidon, so forth. Beirut, possibly modern day Beirut, but that's a discussion for another day. Right now, we're going to take a look at what's going on. This is a graphic courtesy of War Mapper on X, formerly known as Twitter. We got the Gaza map update. The IDF have commenced an operation within part of the Shifa hospital after completing an encirclement of the building complex. Israel has also secured the Al-Shati camp, therefore linking the northern and southern advances. And I'll turn it over to you at this time, Checkmate, and just talk about this from a tactical, military, strategic standpoint, and any other comments you might have.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying that a contact of mine in Jerusalem has advised that on October 7th, there was a cyber attack against Israeli infrastructure, and he really didn't have a great deal further information on that, other than to say it went after the telecoms, it went after some of the energy sector and other pieces of infrastructure, and the point of origin was determined to have been Russia and China. So clearly, internationally, there were a series of ne'er-do-wells who knew that something was coming down, and they seemed to want to be in on it. I don't know that they were fully briefed on the horror that would be October 7th, and sometimes that tends to happen in these things, is that information is withheld when you're getting your way. But what we have here is that the Israelis really took their time getting the offensive initiated to go into Gaza. And what they have done is they have effectively isolated Gaza City from the rest of the Gaza Strip. And so you can see in the right-hand diagram that it is, for all intents and purposes, surrounded and completely cut off. And so now the Israelis dictate what gets in and what gets out. They've established humanitarian corridors going to the south so that civilians can flee. Certainly members of Hamas have secreted themselves within those departing civilian waves of people. None of the rest of the Arab world will accept refugees from Gaza right now, and including and especially the Egyptians. They have moved up to make sure that the Rafah border crossing on the south end of the Gaza Strip into Egypt is not compromised and that nobody gets through. So the Israelis are basically stuck dealing with this as a humanitarian issue in addition to the military piece of it.
That's pretty remarkable. Some of the video infrastructure contained in the tunnels, over 300 miles of tunnels below the ground of the Gaza Strip. And at the heart of it, kind of ground zero, is the Al-Shifa hospital, which is located right here on the map. So now I pulled this from, before we get there, for those who are interested, provided a link from dailymail.co.uk. IDF prepares to storm Hamas terror tunnels. How Israeli troops now face the most dangerous stage of the ground invasion as they enter booby-trapped Gaza passages where terrorists lie in wait. And so this will give you kind of a schematic, loosely, of what they will be encountering, have encountered. And there are multiple layers of these tunnels. Got some information coming up suggestive that this goes as deep as 8 stories. Some of the different things they will use, robots, dogs, of course, armed personnel. We'll skip down here, and then I saw, here's a little bit what they believe the tunnel system is to be like underneath the ground. And the sponge bomb. Any comments on the sponge bomb? We talked about that a little bit in our little pre-meeting on explosives.
I had heard, I believe it's a binary explosive, and binary just means it's got 2 separate pouches of liquids that when they merge, they explode. I had heard that they were using, I guess you could call it an improvised explosive that was designed to be an anti-personnel weapon that, would kill the enemy without collapsing the tunnel. A grenade wouldn't work quite so well. It would channel a lot of the blast. It would probably even, may even hurt the person that was throwing it. But something like this, apparently, it's a fireball. So the person can chuck it down a long hallway. And the other thing it will do is any personnel explosives that might be waiting for an unsuspecting IDF soldier, it would likely trigger those as well. So they can not only clear personnel, but they can clear booby traps with it. I didn't know until you and I started talking that it was being nicknamed the sponge bomb, but I had heard that they were using something pretty unconventional to clear the tunnels.
You also said that draws air out of the tunnels as well. Did I understand that correctly?
It will, in close proximity to the blast, it's almost like a fuel air explosive in the sense that if it doesn't hit the terrorist directly, it stands a good chance to suck the air out of their lungs.
How about that? Interesting. So anybody interested, again, link provided courtesy of dailymail.co.uk. They have great graphics. And we'll fly through some of these real quickly. I know a lot of folks that follow this channel also follow Amir Sarfati of Behold Israel on Telegram. Got a link provided to his resources. He is a messianic believer, a Jewish messianic believer in Jesus, who lives in Israel, citizen of Israel, ex-military. Here's some of the information he's talking about as far as 8 levels, and depending on what's on the level, entry launch locations, level 2, reinforced passageways for rocket transport, level 3, oxygen generation, air movement, 4, meeting and sleeping rooms. I did see a video. I didn't put it up, but they had found the kind of like the Oval Office of the tunnels, and they'd put up a bunch of Israeli flags and had pretty much said, okay, we are here at HQ. We're now in charge. Meeting and sleeping rooms for a Hamas fighters, Gaza Metro connecting city blocks and sections. All kinds of weapons, ammunition, and fuel. It's been crazy, the amount of ordnance that is stored underneath. And then sleeping rooms, command and control center for Hamas as well. So that's pretty much the update in regards to Gaza as of November 15th. Do you have any other thoughts or anything else you'd care to include in this issues with the Gaza Strip?
As of now, no, other than the United Nations Security Council today, they did pass a resolution urging the parties to have a longer-term tactical pause. It was sponsored by Malta. The United States and the Russian Federation abstained as opposed to objecting. It was adopted. It really has zero weight And if you look at the Balkans and you look at the Syrian civil war, in a lot of instances, some of these UN Security Council resolutions are just being outright ignored these days. So even if it had some weight, it probably also would stand to be ignored. But the Israelis in this resolution were finally not called out and diplomatically isolated. It was a very non-confrontational resolution.
How about that? That's kind of rare.
Yeah, it is.
Which is a nice dovetail to, the bulk of this moving forward. Ezekiel 38 and 39. We are watching the Arab world unite against Israel. Iran, Shia, Turkey, Sunni. For those of you not familiar, we've got the scripture reference. Outlines the character's prophecy against Gog of Magog. Now, Magog, we're of the opinion, is modern day Russia. In either way, we're talking about Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, and we believe that's modern day Turkey. And then Persia is pretty straightforward, ancient Persia, modern day Iran, and those groups are getting together and they are uniting in purpose against Israel. And we are going to have example after example of that coming up here in the next few websites and tweets and so forth. And this is something, Checkmate, you talked about, and really has all the different proxies of Persia, all the different, and you got all the stuff that's taken place in the Balkans and how all that's lining up. They're all coming together. And in that last little phrase, the many nations with you and all its troops, that just becomes clearer and clearer every day.
It really is amazing how you're looking at this exceptionally large expatriate community that has come out of the Muslim world and settled in Europe. And the reaction from the various protests tells me that there are certainly some jihadi hotheads in there that if they were called to arms, that we're finally going to march on Jerusalem kind of thing, that they would answer the call and they would go. And so the many nations kind of in that regard, I can see where that piece of the scripture is once again proving to be dead on accurate for the time in which we live.
It's amazing. I mean, it's like with as time goes on, because we've been doing these couple 3 years now on and off.
Yeah.
And there were some things that was pretty clear, and then with each, as time continues to progress, there's like another little piece. Oh, well, that also fits, and it's just amazing. The stuff we watch and read. And here's our man, Recep Erdogan. Hey, Israel, you have a nuclear bomb and you are threatened. I just watch his body language. Look at his eyes. He's pretty sure now.
And your end is near.
Yeah. And it's like,
you can have as many nuclear bombs as you want. You can have whatever you want, but you're on your way out. And you skip that he gets a standing ovation.
Standing ovation. Now, Recep, I'm going to take the home team in the points. You can give me as many points as you want. You are not winning this.
No, he's not. No, he's not. I mean, and I find it amazing that opening paragraph of Ezekiel 38 spells out that what is it, 3 or 4 of the belligerents that are named.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to Josephus, I think it spells out where these places are. But the fact is that it's clear that the Turks are they're definitely in this one, and
yep.
I think that because we've come through the Shemitah Jubilee, it would stand to reason that this would be about the time that the Jews would be called upon by the Lord to consolidate their strength under His rule, and such a test is Ezekiel 38, looks like that would be it. So with Erdogan, who I actually got a wry chuckle out of people over in Israel on a phone call when I referred to him as Skippy Erdogan, just because every time he initiates a military campaign, it just does not work out, and it's because he's purged the military of his best officers, but for political reasons, kind of like what's going on with ours. But yeah, so I find it amazing that the Turks are represented by who again here, Paul?
Meshach, Tubal, and then we come down here a little further, Gomer, arguably, and Beth Dagarma. Gomer, you could say Gomer also has, that those were kind of the groups of people on the southern part of the Black Sea and the northern part. They kind of wrapped around the Black Sea. Okay. So that would include modern day Russia, as well as modern day Turkey, and arguably maybe part of Ukraine, which, that's what, really piqued my interest in a lot of this, that, hey, when you move hundreds of thousands of troops and the bulk of your army, if you're Russia, to the doorstep of Israel there on the Black Sea and the Crimean Peninsula, I mean, that is a signal we are getting close.
Yeah.
And then you have, these others, and then you got some consolidation, appears to be some consolidation between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, some of the old Soviet republics. Here they come, yep. Right on cue.
Yep.
And, that's all. Turkey's, to me, has always been the wild card, because they've always kind of been at odds with, a little bit of odds with Russia, a little bit of odds with Iran. Russia and Iran have gotten together, and you could really see that relationship forming. Well, now Turkey's starting to join that mix over what's taking place in Gaza. So we're getting closer. And we're going to talk from there. We're going to swing from, unless, do you have any more thoughts on Turkey? And
nope. I think we've done that topic some justice.
Okay. And then we're going to swing from there to the other one, looking at the prophecy, ancient Persia, down here at verse 5. Well, that's pretty straightforward. That's modern day Iran. They were Persia for literally millennia. And let's just give them another 10 billion. That seems like a good idea. Here's the link to that article. Biden-Mull's approval of fresh $10 billion for Iran. I think that passed the House, didn't it?
It didn't pass the House so much as it was within executive authority to release it, because it is money that is being held by the Iraqis. And so basically the State Department signaled to the Iraqis that they could go ahead and they could release the 10 billion. The issue is that the Iraqis want to be able to take advantage of being able to import Iranian electricity, and I find that odd, because the Iranians really don't have enough electricity to go around, and they're on their own home front. But the Iraqis wanted to be able to buy electricity, and they wanted to be able to buy natural gas, because the Iraqis have a ton of oil, and they actually have a great deal of natural gas. It's just untapped. They don't have any infrastructure to go get it. It's in Western Iraq. Joe Biden got involved in that when I was in Iraq, and I didn't know that what he was doing was he was flacking for Ukrainian transit fees on natural gas, and he didn't want the Iraqis to develop their natural gas because the field that they're sitting on top of is huge, but it's still huge, and nobody's really tapped into it. So they want natural gas, and they want it from Iran, and this 10 billion helps expedite all of that between those two countries.
Outstanding. And those are both Shia, predominantly Shia Muslim as well. I mean, that was the thing that was always amazing about Iraq. You had a Sunni in Saddam Hussein that was an overlord to a bunch of Shia. But that's not like that anymore. That has changed. So
yes, it has.
And so we have that, and then Iran continues to build uranium stockpiles. Got a link to that provided here. 22 times the limit of the wonderful 2015 deal by Barack Obama. So
Yeah,
that's go
this
ahead.
is this is this is one of those things where it's such a ruse when people say we'll be able to keep the Iranian nuclear program under control, and you see things like this that it's. I've noticed in recent years that the IAEA is taking its job much more seriously than when I was interfacing with them back in the early 2000s, because back in the early 2000s. They were wrapped up in having their sinecures and having their meetings and being the frontier of stemming nuclear proliferation. Now they're legitimately starting to hit the panic button that this looks really pretty bad. So accordingly, the Israelis are not taking any risks, and the Israelis are beginning to stockpile air-to-ground ammunition in Azerbaijan. So it's becoming clear to an awful lot of people that we're heading to that nexus between Israeli action that would deny the Iranians their nuclear program, and the IAEA is out there saying yes, the Iranians are far outside of what they had agreed to.
So that's a problem when the IAEA actually says it's a problem. That's very revealing that
it is.
That they're starting to bark about that's a problem. And these guys, they are master talkers, and all this uranium nuclear program, peaceful purposes, of course. And then this comes out. Iran's supreme leader Khamenei delivered a clear message to Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh when they met in Tehran earlier in November. And it's just Khomeini said that Iran would continue to lend the group its political and moral support, but wouldn't intervene directly. Okay. He also pressed to silence those voices in the Palestinian group publicly calling for Iran and its powerful Lebanese ally Hezbollah to join the battle against Israel in full force. So, yeah, I'm going to believe that.
I am skeptical of this because I believe that there was $10 billion hanging in the balance when this got leaked, and I don't believe it for a second because Hezbollah has been shooting actively at the Israelis on the northern border. The Houthis, which are yet another proxy, have been dropping missiles on the city of Eilat in Israel, that's on the Gulf of Aqaba in the south, and so it's one of those things that I'm just not buying this. It just doesn't square.
Yeah, and they're all getting together and talking. I mean. And the thing that cracked me up, it's like they want us to believe that the bunch in Hamas that pulled this off were a bunch of military masterminds. Did it without any outside influence. We just thought this plan up by ourselves, and we didn't need any help. Okay, sure. And this happened 5 days ago. I thought this was a really big deal because we got the Arab world getting together, both Sunni and Shia factions of Islam, and they are uniting against Israel. And this was the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit that was held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Here's the gang. They're all together. And this guy, Assad, has the nerve to talk about genocide, and he's killed how many hundreds of thousands of his own people, and coming off like some sort of moral.
He was indicted for it. He was indicted for it today in France too.
I saw that.
Yeah.
What was it like? Gassing his own people, him and his brother?
Yeah. That was the rap. Using chemical weapons against his own people.
And he's going to give us some moral clarity about how Israel should be conducting their response to murdering of their citizens. It's like, thank you. I will say this. They all got together. They talked pretty tough. When, frankly, as compared to what is it, Nasrallah? He's been a little disappointing on the speaking tour. I was expecting a little bit more fire from him. I'm not sure what to make of that.
I think he's watching what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, and he understands that he's basically an Iranian road apple if the Israelis really throw down.
It's a nice term. I like that. Well, Abbas, he's been kind of quiet too. He's over there in the West Bank. He hasn't said a whole lot.
Yeah, he I think he's a bit chastened from in 2006 when the civil war kicked off between Fatah and Hamas, and Hamas came out on top. Thank you, Condoleezza Rice and Stephen Hadley, Elliot Abrams, and George W. Bush, who okayed the whole thing. We basically took a side after the elections in Gaza didn't go the way that we had wanted, and Hamas actually was popularly elected. So we basically initiated this civil war, and Fatah got its butt whooped, and he was right in the middle of all of that. So I think he's kind of chastened, and I think he understands that he's got to think twice before he trusts the word of the United States going forward.
How's his? What's your understanding of how his health is? Because he's in his mid 80s. Is that accurate? And I know he's rumored to have some issues with his health.
I haven't heard too much about his health, but it would stand to reason that he's probably not in the best of shape, and he likely goes to Europe when he needs any sort of treatment. He could probably get it here in the United States too. They'd probably roll out the red carpet for him.
You know, it's pretty amazing because you look over there, and you've got the old guard kind of hanging on. Erdogan's rumored to have some heart problems. I thought Putin was dead about a month ago. There were some rumors regarding that. His health is not great. Abbas, his health has been questioned, and everybody's all excited about that. We could just get rid of these people, and it's like every time somebody is displaced, we get somebody younger and more radical that takes their place, and it just leads to more conflict and more difficulty. I get nervous when, like, the day Putin is no more, if we see that happen, what's behind him, I think will be much more fundamental and much more aggressive. But
yeah, there's that line from I think it was Voltaire, après moi le déluge, after me is the flood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way a lot of these old-fashioned strong men, that's the way they think, and that's the way they do business.
Yep. So, be careful what you ask for out there, or dance with the devil.
That's right.
Get to the United States. The Eisenhower striker group has now reached the Gulf of Oman, and this is from Intel Schizo. This guy puts together a lot of work to show where all these different naval vessels are located. Gulf of Oman's over here on my cursor in this area, getting ready to hit through the Straits of Hormuz into the Persian Gulf. This would be Iran for those of you not familiar. Saudi Arabia, and is that one Qatar? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you're always talking about watching them, and sure enough, they were right in the middle of that summit as well. They had a prominent role in that summit.
Yeah, they're definitely the Iranian bankers, and the Qatar is not that friendly in their intentions, including toward the United States. Now, they host a major air base that they built and they footed the bill for, and it's the most sophisticated air base in the world. And so we end up in this circular reasoning that people say, why do we depend on the Qataris? Well, they're an ally. Okay, why are they an ally? Well, they host a major base. Okay, why do they host a major base? Because they're an ally. Well, why are they an ally? Because they host a major base. So you end up in this circular reasoning where the Al-Thani clan, which runs Qatar, they have a prime minister who is funding a lot of these rallies that you see in the United States, the pro-Palestinian rallies. That's Qatari money that's funding that stuff. Same thing with the squad up on Capitol Hill. That's Qatari money that has backed them up. So they really there's a real malevolence that's going on with respect to the U.S. relationship with Qatar, and as a consequence, the Qatari and Middle East and their efforts at the Middle Eastern outlook towards Israel.
They get most of their money from natural gas too. I think that's correct.
Primarily natural gas. They do have some oil.
There's a lot of natural gas in that little part of the world right there. It's crazy, but and from there, which we'd mentioned earlier, drones and missiles continue to be fired from Yemen towards Israel. U.S. Navy ship shoots down drone from Yemen, according to officials. So the drone entered from the Red Sea, coming from Yemen, from the south, headed toward the Gulf of Aqaba. That's that little finger on the Red Sea. So we've shot several of those down, or at least that's what we're putting out anyway.
Yeah, there's real proliferation of those things, and it was the USS Hudner, a destroyer, that shot it down, and probably didn't take much effort. They probably just turned on the close-in weapon system, and it just raked it with gunfire, and the thing was down.
So those things got some pretty good range. I mean, if you're firing something from down here off the southern Arabian Peninsula up here toward the number 9, I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty.
That's a good long flight.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that like a cruise missile? Would that be comparable to a cruise missile that they're launching toward Israel?
From what I understand, they have been launching ballistic missiles at Eilat.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's one of the things that when the Biden administration came into office, a lot of the support that the previous administration was giving the Saudis to go in and root this stuff out and monitor it was just pulled. No explanation given. They just pulled it. And over time, piecemeal, we've started giving the support back to the Saudis. But there's a lot of stuff that has gotten into Yemen. So I could be mistaken. It may not be ballistic missiles. It could very well be cruise missiles. But between drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, the Iranians have really fortified that place. So here again, when the Iranians complain that the strike against the Israelis by Hamas was not sanctioned, and you watch how the two proxies, Hezbollah and the Houthis, have jumped into the fight, it just doesn't add up. It does not add up at all.
So let me ask you this question, from a tactical standpoint. Now, I've read that allegedly those folks down there in the south, where I've got my cursor in Yemen, have a lot of frankly unsophisticated drones and could overwhelm if they were to launch a whole bunch of them. Is that a fair, accurate assessment of that, or is that just somebody talking tough, thinking they can do something that they really can't?
I think that's the recurring nightmare of a lot of ship commanders in the Navy, is that a saturation attack, something would be bound to get through. And when I was in the Navy, we actually did train on eventualities like that, as to how bad you would get hit. Now, the ship that I was on was made primarily of aluminum, yeah, I mean, you could have thrown a firecracker at us, and we would have gone, and our ship would have gone to the bottom of the ocean. But with respect to the destroyers that are on station, they can take a fair amount of punishment. But there probably is enough in there that if they released everything all at once, it probably would result in some serious casualties.
Because I know I've heard some of the like the war gaming. Frankly, some of the more basic tactics with allegedly less sophisticated weaponry can be very effective against, because you're just not expecting it. You're not, I read a lot of those kind of things with this idea.
Yeah, as Lenin once said, quantity has a quality of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess at some point they may or may not try that, but
yeah.
And and this is amazing to me. This is the United States angle, courtesy of Robert Greenway. Twice as a coincidence, 3 times as a pattern, 52 times in less than 27 days. Sure looks like an uncontrolled escalation spiral. And this is what's been happening to U.S. military forces in the last month. This does not include some of the different attacks on energy infrastructure in the region as well. And what are we really doing in response to this?
To the best of my understanding, we have now had, in terms of the military's been pretty silent about things like counter battery fire. That if when they heave rockets or mortars against where our troops in some places will have mortar systems of their own, and they can use a firefighter radar called a Q-36, and they can trace the origin of the fire and they can fire back. They don't really go into it whenever they've done that. But in terms of actual reciprocity for these attacks, we've had 2 flights of 2 F-15s over the course of these 52 attacks. One was last week, and I think another one was yesterday. As far as I know, the Iranians are laughing about it, and they're probably still laughing about it right now, that we've got a pretty feeble response going on.
We're just doing nothing but emboldening these folks to get more aggressive is what we're doing by limited response. So now I thought this was fascinating. Perception. What is the perception of the events in Gaza from Americans? And you had a couple of articles on this, and the link to this one from Tablet Mag had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I didn't want to dwell on this. I just I thought it was a really interesting argument that the article, of course, as you see, is entitled "Snowflakes for Hamas," and really what it comes down to is that a lot of these protests, the muscle and the mass that is behind the protests in the United States, it really comes down to people who have no idea what it is they're protesting and why they're doing it, I think that one of the warnings up until yesterday's march on Washington, pro-Israel march on Washington, one of the things that I was noticing is that using what Joseph Stalin used to refer to as useful idiots, Hamas was winning the information war by turning out these protests. I think that yesterday the Israelis enjoyed seeing that there were 300,000 people as the Park Service estimates on the National Mall. That a gigantic protest that dwarfs any of the Hamas protests took place, and I think that gave the Israelis a great deal of comfort because even they were starting to notice that hey, we're losing the Western world. So I sort of highlighted this for the audience here. Have a look at it. It's pretty well argued. Tablet Magazine is a Jewish-oriented magazine, but it doesn't really get much into doctrine or scripture. It approaches things more from a cultural standpoint. And I think this article does a nice job of summarizing that people are out there protesting on behalf of Hamas just because it is the latest thing now that Ukraine is out of the headlines.
And that's the amazing thing about a lot of these young folks out there protesting. The people who they say they're supporting, they would not be allowed to do that in the place they're supporting. I mean,
exactly right.
Especially young women, they would be silenced, and you would be wearing black, and you'd have your little head covering, and you'd have a little slit for your eyes so you could see what you're doing. You wouldn't be allowed to. You just wouldn't be allowed to do it. But like you say, useful idiots out there. And then we got this as well. Hundreds of Biden government staff are in revolt over Israel and Gaza. Link provided to this as well. It's right up here. And that's pretty much the gist of the article. Employees and staffers in the Biden government have signed an open letter urging President Biden to pursue a ceasefire and temporarily end the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. So let you know where these folks are on the issue with President Biden. So, any thoughts over this as well?
It just goes to show, having been a presidential appointee, it just goes to show the ineptitude of who the Biden administration has hired. I'm astounded. I'm astounded by this, the audacity of these folks. And the article is very short and succinct. I recommend it.
There you go. And we're going to close with Psalm 97, verse 5. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of, keyword, all the earth. And I always like to talk about what Scripture says. When it goes down, it will be all the earth. Isaiah, I think it's 20 or 24, talks about that as well. And we have some happenings taking place in Iceland, specifically off the southwest coast of Iceland. Earthquakes by the thousands, and it just continues to happen. There's like a massive rip in the land across in the middle of all these cities. This is about a 6-minute video done by this young lady. She does a wonderful job, and reason I thought she's pretty credible. She says anybody who tells you what's going to happen has no idea what's going to happen, and presents a lot of geological facts about how some of this stuff works. She does a really nice job explaining it. It's 6 minutes. We're not going to go over it here, but if you're interested in watching this, and as of doing this, I haven't heard of any volcanic eruptions in Iceland at the time, but we got steam coming up through the cracks in the middle of the towns. We've evacuated cities, and this is going to be an issue. Have you heard any additional news or anything on this, Checkmate?
Not really. I would say is that, as you and I talked about in the pre-brief, that when volcanoes go in Iceland, a lot of air traffic on the Great Circle route between the United States and Europe ends up getting canceled, or has to go at lower latitudes in order to avoid flying through ash and choking out the engines. The other thing is that up in Iceland, we still have a military presence at Keflavik Air Base, and that is used to support what's called the GI-UK gap, the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap in the Atlantic Ocean, which is where the Russians are concerned. It's critical for NATO to keep an eye on those sea straits. And further to the point, the United States Air Force is the air defense for Iceland. There's almost always 4 jets sitting runway alert in Iceland. So militarily, it becomes a little bit of a problem if the thing erupts, and other plans have to get made, and U.S. personnel have to be moved off the island because they're really not doing much good just being there. Because operations get canceled due to the conditions from the volcano.
Yeah, so just eventually will depend on how big of an eruption, if one occurs, what that will do. Now, is that local knowledge as to where that air base is located in Iceland, or is that?
Yeah, they pretty well all know where it is, and they have a pacifist constitution. Yet every time we make noises about just closing shop there, they beg us to stay, even though they're pacifists. So
they appreciate the coverage, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They're kind of caught. They're kind of caught in a conundrum. So they all know that it's there. They appreciate that it's there. And I know that the Air Force wants to stop doing alerts there, but that was an issue when I was at the State Department. I had to fight them on, and it was, hey guys, if you abandon this, you're not getting back in there. And the United States Navy needs a friendly runway in that country. So, yeah.
Very good. Very good. And that pretty much, well, I'll close with Micah 1 verse 4, and the mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will split open like wax before the fire, like waters poured down a steep place. And again, that is a little foreshadowing of what is ultimately coming during a 7-year period of time called the tribulation, which will be filled with all kinds of geological upheaval with earthquakes, no more mountains. The Bible says that's going to happen. It sounds over the top, but stated in many places, this planet, the geography of this planet is going to radically change, and it's restated multiple places. So again, this is Iceland. This is not encompassing the whole globe, but has the potential to change some things up and affect travel and potentially security. So with that, I'm going to close out. Checkmate, you have anything you want to close out with or have any comments?
Ezekiel 38, everybody, welcome to it. We're in it.
Yep. And like we talked about earlier, it seems like every day that just gets clearer and clearer. And I would say, the two things with that, you got the Arab world uniting against Israel, and you got Turkey starting to have more normalized relations with Russia and Iran, and the Shia Sunni gap is getting narrower, and they're coming closer together. So I get the sense we're probably going to be doing some more stuff here in the near future. So with that, anything else?
I got nothing else. Check me out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at The Real Checkmate. And I'm constantly updating stuff. And Paul, I know you look at my feed and I look at yours, so we cross-check each other.
Yeah, we do. It's been kind of funny since I've met you. It's like, oh, well, I feel good. I'm looking in the right spots.
Yep.
So, all right. With that, we're going to sign off, and we'll catch you guys later. Enjoyed it. Take care.
God bless.